it pulls out folks that have the character, the work ethic, the drive, the grit, all these things that we talk about, we hear about. There has to be some challenges, right? So like,
All right. So guys, welcome back. I pulled up some topics across Chat GPT. And then I got a message, and I'm just prefacing, we can talk about anything you want. It's getting harder for growth to be funded by loans. There are a couple headlines out there saying that PT clinics are having a hard time borrowing or refinancing. Hinge and Sword are full on changing, obviously, the future of the profession. I think it got me thinking about some stuff that's pretty interesting for what like the future patient is like. And then I got a message talking about Chick-fil-A and how a therapist was, playing pickleball with some students that are in school but working at Chick-fil-A, and how much they love it and how passionate they are. And this therapist was talking about PT school and what a grind it could be for so many. It wasn't for me, but I know how crazy PT school can get for some. Where do you guys want to start?
Gosh,
we can go into that. Sounds like a lot.
Let's talk about the PT school experience. So basically what, and they didn't say I could share their name, so I'm not going to. But what this person was saying was he remembers, PT school and the experience. Now, I'll tell you guys candidly, like I did not take PT school seriously. I already owned my business for a couple years before I went to PT school. We had 2 locations. We just opened a 3rd location. So for me, I had been a strength coach before that. I had my bachelor's in kinesiology. There was nothing like PT school wasn't about learning things that I was going to do and maybe exploring new careers. I already had my career, outpatient ortho. I would literally leave my house on Monday morning, drive 3 hours to South Florida to Miami, attend classes, leave either Thursday night if I could skip Friday classes or Friday as soon as classes ended. And, PT school is just a barrier between me and a license. That's all it was. So I didn't take it too serious. I didn't get stressed out. If I got A's or B's, cool. I couldn't get a C or I got kicked out. That's kind of what it was for me. What was it like for you guys?
Jimmy, you were next in line chronologically.
I mean, for me,
all right. Or no, when you graduated after me, or you're a little bit.
I think so. Yes, 14.
All right, so I'm next. I don't know, because I graduated in 2011. I mean, I don't know. I took it seriously because I didn't have the whole business like you did, Tony. Like I didn't already have like a.
Did you go straight from high school to bachelor's to master's or doctorate? What did you do?
Yeah, so from high school, I selected a school that had the 3-in-3 program, so the 3-year accelerated undergrad, and then the 3-year DPT, all at the same school, all at the same campus. So if you did 2 schools, it would be 4 years to get your bachelor's, and then 3 years to go transfer somewhere else to get your DPT. So it'd be 7 years. So it was 3 years total, but partly choosing that because I was able to play D2 baseball and get some baseball money, and it wasn't that far away, and kind of had all the amenities of, sucking an 18-year-old into the vortex. So no, I mean, I took it, as you can imagine, I took it pretty seriously, because it was challenging, and like some holidays I wouldn't go home. I'd be studying, like certain, Easters or whatever. I'd be, staying home, or I'd be staying on campus and studying. So I took it pretty seriously, although at this point, like, I'm barely treating and I'm trying to grow the practice in the business. So it's kind of a little ironic, but like, I don't know, like what's someone else's alternative? Like, of course I think take it seriously, because otherwise, like, I give quick anonymous stories, but folks that like failed out of our school or failed out of other schools, they're not crushing it most likely in life right now. If you pulled up their social media or whatever, like their actual situation. So, I think for me, it was just something to, push through, just like everything else, whether it's training for baseball and sports or, whatever. So yeah, but my program anyway, it was the end of the 6 years, you would get the bachelor's and the doctorate at the same graduation ceremony. So, yeah.
Before Jimmy goes, real quick, you brought something up. Like, I also made the choice. I remember I applied to pretty much all the schools around me. So that was like 4 schools. But the biggest thing that was the decision maker was which one had the quickest program. I got into 2 of them. But for the record, I was missing 5 prereqs that I never took in undergrad. I never took any chemistry, never took any something else. I was missing a physics, missing a psychology. So there were 5 prereqs. 2 schools let me in conditionally on, okay, you got to get the chemistry done. Never did it. But within those two schools, what made the difference?
The honor code, the honor system.
Yeah, what made the difference was one took a summer off and the other one didn't. So I was graduating 6 months earlier in a school that didn't take the summer off. And I think the main kind of message in this was, and you guys probably know this, I think the culture of the programs, it's like there's probably a work-life balance here that gets lost. I think there's too much emphasis, too much importance put on stuff that really isn't that important. Like, I go back to all of the things we've probably all forgotten that was so stressed and so important and you know, put so many gray hairs on some people's head prematurely that really now, like 5 years in, 10 years in, 20 years in, it doesn't even matter. I don't even remember the stuff that I've forgotten.
So
that for the right person, it's probably useful. Jimmy, what was your experience?
Yeah, so I mean, I went through my bachelor's and then worked for 15 years, and then I knew I was going to have to take all of the prereqs before I could apply for school, and I was doing that while I was working full time. And then I wound up, I think I'd taken my last like 2 or 3. I like left work, you know, retired, and then took my last 2 or 3 prereqs while I was applying, and then went into the program full time, and it was 3 years straight up.
So you didn't work in the program. You were working full time.
I worked on the side, but I didn't work full time. Like doing the job that I was going to do, there were no PT programs. Actually, yeah, the University of Scranton. I don't know. I think I just wanted to be done with it. I didn't want to be in Northeast Pennsylvania anymore if I wasn't doing radio. So I just sort of left.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like same thing, right? Like for me, it was jump in with both feet and be fully immersed. And I was a college student again with all the strengths and all those different stresses and different things that came with it. Definitely wasn't expecting that. It's not like college was like easy the first time. But I was a communications major. I loved it. This I liked too, but like there was a lot of stresses for things that I don't remember anymore. But like, yeah, I remember professors trying to chalk me off a ledge. Like, I don't know why you're so stressed out over getting an 87. And I'm like, well, why didn't I get a 90? And like, it sort of doesn't matter. I'm like, but why didn't I? You know, like,
yeah.
So I think it just comes into like social hierarchy. Like, how come that person was able to do it and I wasn't in 6 months? What if I'm not able to do that? Or what else am I, you know? So like for me, that was a struggle. That and a lot of my classmates were like Dave. They were going right through school where I had taken a break and done something a little bit not related to the material we were studying that particular day.
Yeah.
So Tony, the reason to bring this up is what again?
More just to understand and kind of discuss the culture of academics versus, you know, are we putting too much stress on DPT students? Can we make it more enjoyable? If we know enrollments are down, we know that therapists aren't getting paid enough. If we want to grow the profession still, is there an opportunity here to kind of make the academics programs more enjoyable, more appealing, more attractive for students to come in? And just kind of the person who messaged me, I've said before, like, I have to actively work to kind of protect the passion for what I do. Because if I just fall into the routine, I'm going to get so sick of it and burn out. And I think that starts happening in school. Like before you even become a therapist, therapists are getting burnt out in the programs. So I just wanted to float it by you and hear your backstory.
I have a response to that, but go ahead and read out Jeremy Sutton's response here that we have on the screen.
Goni measurements stress me out so much. I don't remember the last time I touched the goniometer. Yeah, I just watched the guy. I didn't share it publicly, but this would be a separate topic. He was on TikTok, amazing clinician. I would send any of my family to him, but he literally went through every single special test when doing, like, I'm going to say an upper quarter screen or something like that. Tested every reflex, did every special test, looked at every like articulation, and he did it quick, but air quotes quick was like 20 minutes. I was like, holy crap, why are you looking at all of this stuff for normal people? And it brings up the question, like, if I go to the doctor doesn't order every test possible. You let the condition kind of guide your evaluation and your assessment. But he basically came out because other people had said it, and he was like, well, you're a shitty therapist. You got to find out if it's upper motor neuron. And I had to look up what that means because I forgot. You have to do all of these things. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, let context of the situation guide your decisions down the road. We don't have to do every single thing. But go ahead, Dave.
So I just saw recently a Nick Saban video where he was saying every person that gets into medical school is intelligent, but not everyone makes it through. And everyone that makes it through and becomes a doctor, not everyone is a great doctor, depending on your definition of great or excellent or average or subpar and all that. With physical therapy, whether it's medical degree, physical therapy degree, nursing, whatever, I know we kind of talked about it before in the show of like, licensure and the hurdles and the things that are out there for multiple reasons to, protect the public. But then also through our programs, it's like there has to be some amount of challenge to filter out people. Otherwise, like either the profession or any profession gets, flooded with a bunch of new workers that maybe are, some of them are actually subpar or would have been inappropriate for the normal safeguards or guide rails or, structure of what type of person or professional or skill set and or combination of all those things is typically going to be like the ideal worker or professional for whatever industry that might be. And so I know you guys talked about it before of like the licensure now or in general for anything for, a license or, insurance for plumbing or for your roofer or whatever, like there's some protection there. And some of it was, with the intent of also protecting the consumer or the patient in this case. But my stance is that all of this schooling, there has to be some challenge. It needs to be hard. It pulls out folks that have the character, the work ethic, the drive, the grit, all these things that we talk about, we hear about. There has to be some challenges, right? So like, I don't see anything wrong with it at all. And when I was going through school, like I never heard the word burnout ever. Now, after 2011, I graduated 2011 and in 2015 and COVID in 2019 and then 2020s and all that. And somehow this word is like everyone's burnout all the time. And so I'm sure the people, the other physical therapists that are, 50, 60, 70 years old, I feel like they've never heard the word burnout either. And so I know the burnout thing we're not talking about the whole career. We're talking about like the schooling part. But anyway, final comment on it is like, there needs to be some big challenges, for us, it was gross anatomy, right? So you had the 8 weeks of cutting open cadavers and dissecting, head to toe. That weeded out like 25% of the class. Like people that just couldn't get through it. They failed it. They had to either retake it or just leave the school, go to another school, or find a different bachelor's, find a different program, go, study business or accounting or whatever. I think these things are great. I think these things are important. I think they're needed. And I don't see any changes, with it coming forward.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I can see it. But we do live in a world of participation trophies. Everyone gets a medal. Everyone walks away happy. And nobody's happy. So. Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, but I don't think I used the phrase burnout much when I was going through undergrad or really even in work. I loved what I did, but I did hear it a lot. And I started to experience it when I was in PT school, and I was a decade older than everybody else. I don't claim to be an expert on where that came from, but it was there. I don't know if it was the curriculum the same, or the things the hoops that we were jumping through the same, Was it this cohort of people around us, right? The Stanford prison experiment. What can the people actually create the environment? Do the people become the roles? Were they just used to being told that this is too much, and when this is too much, I'm burned out? I don't know the answer. I think it's multifactorial. I'm sure some people in academics study it because now they're seeing a problem. They're seeing one generation of PTs telling the others, don't come into this profession. School is way too hard. It stresses you out. When you get out there, the risk versus reward isn't enough. And those people aren't doing it. And the proof, that's objective, right? I don't know the reason, but they're right because less people are applying and less people are going to PT school. So what is it? I don't know if you can tease out what those things actually are to keeping qualified students from applying these days. I don't know what it is.
Nice. You guys want to move on?
Yeah, Dave, what were we talking about? We were talking about last week, and we said we want to get Tony's take on the conversation we had on Thursday.
There was the Jared Hall post that about physical therapists who over assume they think they're treating a ton of patients, but then because of cancels and no-shows and seasonality and scheduling and whatever, I forget how it was phrased. I think there was like a graph or something, but it was from last week. Jared Hall posted, and I feel like I typically disagree with like a lot of what he posts, but like this one, I'm like, yeah, I could get on board with that. That would make sense. Tony reshared it. Tony, if you maybe want to pull up your post or if you recall your sentiment around it, I agree because I've been in, a couple of different in-network practices that were not like crazy mills, but like, 3 patients an hour. But then you get the cancels and no-shows and all that. So the assumption is that the physical therapist feels like they're treating 20 or 30 patients a day. And then when you look at the averages, it's like, I don't know, 13 to 15 or something a day.
Yeah, I replied to this. I shared it. I agree with most of Jared's posts. I love his posts. And I've talked to, like, we've had team meetings when we have big teams. We have team meetings when we have small teams. It's, look, you guys, and me included, we're going to remember the 10 o'clock hour where the 9:30 patient showed up late. The 11 o'clock patient showed up early. The 10 o'clock patient showed up on time. Somebody walked in the schedule and we took them as a walk-in eval. We're going to remember that. But we're going to forget that the 1 o'clock patient showed up, canceled, and all of these other gaps, just human nature. It's just the way our brains are wired. Like especially if you feel stressed, this goes back to students and all that stuff. Like if you're naturally a person who gets stress, you get a stress response, the adrenaline starts flowing, you start thinking about all these things, it's going to be even that much more impactful. It's fine. Like, I acknowledge that is a human trait, but when you're thinking about compensation, when you're thinking about, expectations, when you're thinking about your reward for what you do, please just take a second, go back, look at the absolute numbers, clear your mind of the emotional experience, and just be like, oh, shoot, seems like I was so busy, but I actually only generated 127 units this week and I got paid for 40. Yeah. Like, if we want to be scientists, let's look at this scientifically. Don't even count visits, because sometimes there's going to be people that have shorter visits, less units. Look at the absolute unit value produced for the number of hours worked. And I think most therapists will realize they were not as busy as they thought they were.
Is there a psychological phenomenon that explains this? Like, is there some term that you know of? Because I would say for this, I would say one reason I would bet, I'm just guessing, this is an assumption. Any physical therapist that has an electronic medical record, that the front desk, the admin, they're booking evaluations, they're booking patients onto the calendar of that physical therapist. This is where I believe this directly relates to. A physical therapist comes into work right now, 8:52 a.m., on a Tuesday, and they see X amount of patient visits on the calendar for that day. Now, of course, some cancel, no-show, get sick, flat tire, kids are sick, they can't come in. The new patient eval gets lost, they go to the wrong building, whatever. And things happen. And then at the end of the day, they actually treated less than what they saw on their electronic medical record calendar. But when they saw their calendar for that day, there must be some psychological something that like, that's what they're perceived. Like that's at the end of the day, they're like, this is all the patients I'm going to see and treat. So maybe there's some expansion of like their mind of, okay, I'm treating 15 patients today. And then at the end of the day, if it is only 11 patients and 4 cancel, no show, get sick, they don't want to come in, they drop off, whatever, that physical therapist still thinks that they had already registered the 15 visits for that day, like in the memory bank. Yeah. And there's no changing that registration of like, actually, let me recorrect it. Let me course correct. It was actually 11 and not 15. That's what I bet some of this comes from. I'm be curious, if there's some psychological phenomenon or explanation.
Yeah, the only one I could find really that came close was from Daniel Kahneman. Did you guys read Thinking Fast and Slow? That was like, that was his jam. The planning fallacy, tendency for people to underestimate how much time tasks will take or overestimate how productive or busy they'll be, even when you don't have experience or data to show otherwise. So you're saying it was like a dashboard at the bottom of the screen, like a scoreboard, what inning it was and how many patients they had seen. They would always this is saying they would overestimate how many things that they had done versus how many things that had actually been completed.
I think so. And there's an example, like when I did one of my rotations in a hospital that was 8 weeks long, you would have a schedule for that day, but then throughout the day you would get these add-ons, and like you would have to like, my CI would have to like call the office, like the outpatient office downstairs, or call some rehab manager. I don't even remember what it was. And they would ask, or we would find out if there were like add-ons, like new patients that like just got medically cleared for physical therapy to get out of the bed and walk and move around or whatever. And, check their vital signs, whatever it is. And because those new add-ons, like the time between, like we had visited all the patients that we had to for that day. Now it's like, okay, let's check if there's any add-ons. And let's say there was like 1 or 2 other patients to be added on. The time duration between when we found out there was a new add-on patient and when we actually went to go visit them and treated them was like such a short, like little time window that I bet like the opposite is true here, where it's like I treated more patients or visited more patients in the hospital, but I didn't feel like I had, because I didn't have enough mental time to like process, like I have this huge calendar and like all these patients are here, but it was like less in a hospital potentially, or at least my experience. And then there was these add-ons, but the add-ons, like, yeah, it was kind of like this, like this, the CI's hoping there's no add-ons, but like she's calling for add-ons anyway. Like that's just her job. But we would go ask for an add-on. We would see if there is, we would go visit them within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. And then, so we would visit and treat more patients per day in a hospital, at least my experience, than what was originally scheduled at the top of the morning. So it's almost like the opposite. Like and that's whether it's the great hours of working, 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 or whatever in a hospital and, decent benefits from a hospital system. Maybe there's some truth here of like therapists in a hospital are less likely to be burnt out because the opposite is true. Like you have a shorter, more concise patient census or whatever you want to call it, and then more get added later, but you didn't have those added on at the beginning of the day, and the whole day didn't look as daunting. I don't know. That just possibly was
this we always talk about crafting the patient experience. Like, how do we make the patient feel, important and listened to and heard and all this stuff? Now we're getting into how do you craft the employee experience? How do you screen so you understand the personality of the person you're hiring? You're going to have people that crumble under, the pressure of seeing a full schedule. So you're like, all right, I want this person on the team. I know they can't handle seeing a full schedule. It doesn't make them feel excited to tackle the challenge of a full schedule. So I'm going to unload the schedule, but then gradually add people onto the schedule throughout the day as the openings allow. Like that's kind of what was happening in the hospital setting that you're describing. You walk in, you're like, oh, hey, we're done. We've got extra capacity. Let's add some on. that was maybe more tolerable than just having those people on the schedule ahead of time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I know for myself, like when I go out for a long run, I can't think, all right, I'm going to run 6 miles today because I'll never do it. I'll quit at 3. But I'm like, I'm going to go out, and I try to intentionally pick routes or pick directions that I'm never crossing my house, because I'll stop if I cross my house. So you're playing this psychological game with yourself. And I bet there are situations where, during the initial interview, if you could figure out what this person's personality is like, what they thrive on, are they the kind of person that wants the challenge of, give me 30 patients today and I'm going to see them all and they're going to be amazed and nobody's going to cancel. You just got to understand those personality traits when you're bringing them on board, because I think that's huge.
I mean, I think they should be sitting there at like 4:00 and just, if anybody's going to cancel, you want it to be your 4:30 patient, right? I mean, it's not, a 3:30 patient canceling is sort of a waste. It's like, what does that do? They've still got to be here, right?
Well, now this is why many practice owners, I won't mention any names because I don't have their approval to say this, but many practice owners that I know either sold their practice in the past or they still have a practice. And this is why they specifically hire individuals who either previously were athletes, high school athletes, college athletes, and or worked in hospitality. And if they don't have one of those two things, they may not hire them, or they don't hire them, because the person that previously went through high school sports or college sports, there's adversity. Of course, if you work in hospitality, you're a waiter, a waitress, you were a bartender, whatever it might be. If you worked in hospitality or the service industry and or you're a high school or college athlete, you've gone through a lot of different adversity. I'm not saying you haven't gone through adversity elsewhere. Like Jimmy obviously had a ton of adversity and challenges, in real time on live radio. And that's like, that would be, kind of like a unicorn situation where that could get him hired by some of these practice owners as well. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because the high school or college athlete or the person that works in hospitality would be okay with that, Jimmy. They would be okay with the 3:30 patient cancel, but they still have that 4:30 patient, and they're not hoping that the 4:30 patient cancels. They're like, I'm a gamer. Is there an add-on for 3:30, and I'll see the 3:30 and the 4:30. So like, not every day is like that. Maybe they don't always have the same motivation like that every day, but in general, that's who you're hiring.
I'll run the extra 5 miles, but if we're gonna skip something, why not skip the last 5 miles? Why not? If someone said like, we're gonna pause in the middle, I'd be like, this is wasted time. Let's keep moving. In fact, I'd say the athlete would be like, let's be smarter about this. If we're gonna cancel something, I got stuff to do because I got to hit the gym. Go ahead.
So that's the person who's gonna get on the phone, call the 4:30 and move them to 4. That's the person who's gonna get on the phone, call the eval for tomorrow and say, hey, I got an opening today, and like, I always go back to, can you train that into somebody, or is that just in their nature? And I look at my 4 boys. I'm like, look, same parents, same household. I understand the idea, that things are different even in the same house. But one of my boys, he's going to be the one who's like calling ahead, getting people moved up, moving people around, just staying productive. And then my other boy would love to have an hour break where he's going to go hide in the break room, sit in the back, sip some coffee, and, watch YouTube. So those personalities, man, they can be powerful.
Okay. And I would like to hire one and not the other.
Yeah. Dave, go ahead.
I was going to say the topic we were talking about on Thursday, Tony, when you weren't here, did you listen at all? Were you able to hear it at all? It was about
I tried to, but I didn't hear this part.
So the athletic club started, it's a 8-facility gym in New York City. It started out as sort of outdoor free workouts, show up. We're going to do a group of 20 people working out, and it grew into brick and mortar, and it grew into a decently large business. And Dave and I were talking like sort of an impromptu steal this strategy. If you're hearing this and you own a brick and mortar clinic, I know you do some things that are similar. Why wouldn't a clinic facilitate this? Why wouldn't you at least try it with one of those go-getter employees and say, let's try this for 3 months. If you can cultivate a following, if you can cultivate a group who shows up in unused clinic hours before work, after work, this is now part of your job and you can take a cut of this because this is above and beyond. So I actually called my buddy who's a psychologist. I lucked out because he was on a business trip, so he was driving and had like 2 hours to talk to me about this. But we talked all about the psychological factors that were at play. A lot of them, which I brought up on the episode, that get brought into play when someone registers for like a marathon through maybe a nonprofit, a charity, and they have to fundraise and they get into the marathon for free. I'm using air quotes, but they also get this community of people who are also doing that thing too. He told me a couple different things. Social identity theory. People want to belong to a group that they identify with. How do you know someone does CrossFit? Don't worry. They'll tell you about it. You wear the jackets. People who do Ironman triathletes. I cannot understand this. I've done several. And kudos to each their own. They get the tattoo. I can't do it. I can't do it.
What about the lady, the 80-year-old lady? Did you see that? Have you been following?
Yeah, 80-year-old lady crossed.
That was awesome.
Looked like she was
great chair.
She's like fell at the end.
Yeah.
Get up. Did she finish? So social identity theory, the moment you know the names and goals of the people around you, your fitness journey becomes part of their shared story and not a solo grind. I've been in triathlon clubs where we weren't even training for the same race. But on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, we'd go for the long ride. And if someone wasn't there, you sort of got heat for it. You know, hey, where are you at? We did this. And where were you? It's because people like us, as Seth Godin would say, people like us do things like this. Group cohesion and commitment. This is the thing we're looking for, which is like, all right, if you're laying in bed, I used to run with some buddies in high school. If we know we did like a 5K series, a 5K every Sunday for 6 weeks. You can't skip one because we all signed up together. Like we jumped into this together. Consistency principle. That's from Robert Cialdini, the guy who wrote Persuasion and Influence. Once somebody commits to a group, especially publicly, that's where I think this athletic club did it right. They're psychologically driven to stay consistent with that commitment, even when that magic M thing, motivation, lapses. Everybody's like, where do I get motivation? Ironically, it's chicken or the egg. You got to keep showing up and then you get motivation. You know, are you guys on LinkedIn at all?
Yeah.
LinkedIn was smart. They jumped on the whole Wordle sort of phenomenon and they created a handful of games and they reward you with nothing more than a number of a streak of how many days in a row you've played that game. And then after you hit, 25, 50, 100, you sort of get a little badge. You know who cares about that? Nobody cares about that except for you. I care about that because I'm on 119 days of playing the whatever game it is that I play with the 5 words. So there's a couple things that you can build into this. But Tony, we're not taught any of these things in PT school. We're taught about units. We're talking about what Dave was talking about. You show up to a hospital, you are handed a schedule. This sounds like entrepreneurship plus psychologically creating a group. I feel like this would be something if you did it in your community, you'd be pissed. Here's the thing again, we talked about like Nike Strength Club, and I'll get to another example that fortifies this. You'd be pissed if some, and I'm using air quotes again, non-credentialed, non-professional went and just did this. Exercise is medicine, and you're out there just prescribing it willy-nilly in the park. Of course, I'm being facetious, and I feel like I have to say that, but you'd be pissed if someone else did it, and yet I don't know if a lot of people are doing this. Why?
Dave, were you going to say something?
No, I don't know. I don't know why more people aren't doing this because obviously it works. And
is it physical therapy? Is that the thing? Like, is this physical therapy? So that's outside of my scope. I'll just worry about what's between the lines. I'm going to play this game. This is the game I signed up to play.
Well, so then you wonder, do you go back to the whole idea of public education and, we're raised to be cogs in a wheel? And I do think the physical therapy profession, it tends to attract those who are academic achievers, those who have done well on testing, those who have done well in academic settings, those, the creatives, the leaders, the ones who break the rules. They're not generally the ones that are attracted to this kind of thing. We always have the conversation about chiropractors versus PTs. Like chiropractors go in expecting to open their private practice. PTs go in generally expecting to have a job available. Like this is a safe profession.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@kittle.com. DAVE@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE@CONCIERGE painrelief.com, or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.